If you could you tell us a little bit about some of the most common things that you see here in League City during the colder months?
So, some of the most common things really to look at just in general when using, especially like space heaters, right? You want to make sure you're keeping those 3 feet from any type of heat source. You want to plug those in directly to a wall outlet. You don't want to use an extension cord. Those extension cords can actually overheat. They're not really designed for those kind of electrical loads to be running through them in most cases. So you want to be plugged straight into a wall outlet. You don't want to leave them running when you're not home. Once the house is, your room is kind of warmed up or whatever, and you're going to sleep, you don't want to leave it running overnight while you're sleeping. So things like that are some of the big key things to take away from them. Most of the space heaters should have what's called a tip sensor in it, meaning that if it were to happen to fall over, it would turn off automatically. So you really want to make sure that you're using a UL listed space heater that has those type of sensors in it. It's just some general safety features for that. When you start looking at fireplaces, in Southeast Texas, although I'll say the last few years has probably been the exception, we don't normally get those real cold snaps. However, today's one of them, right? So, when you're looking at using fireplaces, you need to make sure that you're getting your fireplace cleaned out, that, you're not getting an abundance of buildup inside of those, which could create a fire inside the actual chimney of the fireplace. You're going to want to use, dry seasoned firewood. And why dry firewood? It creates less smoke in general. So, and then always make sure that your smoke detectors are working, that you've got a CO detector in your house. Everybody should have just changed those at Halloween, roughly in that time frame. You should have at least tested them or changed your batteries if you had them. So, just those are kind of the big safety things to take away from today, that you can hopefully make things better and safer through the holiday season.
Absolutely. Now, in the event that there are power outages, if we get a cold blast or, God forbid, a bunch of snow again, or something like that were to happen, people usually, rely on things like generators for their power. But every year you hear about people, sometimes entire families, found dead in their homes when using generators. Can you tell us a little bit about the causes of those deaths with those generators?
Yeah, so in general, you don't want to use a generator within 20 feet of any type of opening to your house, whether that be a door or a window. Get the generators away from the house. Don't run them in your house. That's probably the biggest thing of the buildup of that carbon monoxide, right? Make sure you got a CO detector that's working well. And then, from there, it's just, going back to kind of having some common sense on how you're running them. Don't overload the generators. Don't fuel them while they're running. Turn them off, let them cool down, and then refuel them. And just kind of take some of those basic safety precautions when using generators. Generators are a great tool. They're great. They're great to have, and relatively are safe as long as you follow some just basic safety guidelines when using them.
Absolutely. And then last, of course, since we're just now 1 month away from Christmas, Christmas trees. You always hear about it, especially the real ones. People will walk out, they'll leave their Christmas tree lights on, and then they come back to the whole house burned down. Can you tell us a little bit about Christmas trees and being safe with those?
Yeah, absolutely. So, with Christmas trees, you've got, especially the live ones, you got to make sure that you're watering them daily. You got to keep water in them. They're a living organism. They're a living plant, so they need water to stay alive. When you're picking out your tree, wherever you go to do that, shake the tree real good and make sure that all the pine needles or the needles on them aren't falling off right away. The needles falling off, the needles changing color, that's kind of an indication that the tree hasn't been watered well, that it's not getting enough water, and that it's in the process of dying. You're going to want to keep the tree at least 3 feet from any heat source. And then, similar to a space heater, you have the lights on when you're home, but if you're going to leave your house, unplug those lights. Don't leave the lights on while you're not there. Just kind of take some basic precautions to make sure you don't come home and find that your house is on fire.
Absolutely. Now, we appreciate you joining us today, and thank you for answering these basic questions for the community at large. Thanks for joining us on KGTX7 for another episode. Glad we could bring these answers to you and help you better prepare being safe this winter.